Mountain bike brakes are generally pretty reliable as well as powerful these days. And other than having to sort of bleed them every now and then and perhaps change the brake pads when they wear out, there's not too much you need to do to them. However, there are a whole bunch of really cool little hacks and tips to make sure your brakes are running on point all the time. Here we go. So, tip number one is making sure that your calipers are centered evenly over the disc rotor. It's not the best thing to happen because firstly, it's going to slow you down slightly. You're going to feel that drag, you're going to hear that drag as well. It's really annoying hearing a brake dragging, and also it's not going to feel quite nice at the lever. What you want is a nice positive feel, and sometimes it can feel a bit spongy and a bit wishy-washy if it's like that. So, as you can see with this particular one, it's dragging enough that the wheel just won't sort of rotate by itself. Now, what you want to do is undo those caliper bolts, and then the first little trick you want to do is with them loose so the caliper can move around on its mounts. Put your hand on your back brake lever and just rotate the wheel forwards until it stops, and then you're going to nip up those bolts, not completely tight, just enough to hold the caliper in position, and more often than not this will be enough to center that caliper. So I'm just going to release the brake now and we'll see how it is. So it is rubbing a tiny bit there, but that's okay. So now the next step is to visually look down the top of the brake pads, and you can see, I can see air on one side and I can see where the rotor itself is touching the inside pad here. So by undoing these bolts again, I can actually manipulate the caliper manually by hand until it's no longer touching. Now, as you do this, you want to make sure that you really don't want to touch the disc rotor itself with your bare hands if possible, because the oil from your skin can contaminate your rotors. Now, if you're unlucky enough to contaminate your rotors like this, then really when you take them off your bike, you want to give them a good clean with some isopropyl alcohol or some disc brake cleaner. Any other sort of cleaners that evaporates, that's what you're looking for. Then using a very fine emery paper, you want to coarsen up the surface of that disc rotor and then go to bed your brakes in, just like you would with a new set of brakes. Bed them in all over again. The idea is you're depositing material from the brake pads onto those disc rotors. Make sure you do it evenly though, otherwise you'll end up with that sort of warping effect and you get an oscillation of the brake pads, which leads to squealing. You want to have a nice even amount all the way around. Now, this is a really cool pro tip, and I noticed that all of the XC World Cup pro racers, the mechanics do this to all their bikes. They mark the positions for your brake levers so you know exactly how far in your brakes are once you have your preference. In my case, they're exactly where I like them. So I'm going to make a mark on my handlebar that only I will know is there, just on the inside and the outside of the brake lever clamp. So I know exactly the position it needs to go. If I ever need to move it, maybe if I'm bleeding my brakes, I move the lever up and it moves side to side, I know exactly where that's going to go. You can do this with all of your controls. Some of them have a split clamp, like this particular one here, so you can make a mark on the inside of that, easy enough that you will never see at a glance, but you know every time you go to tweak your bike, you can get things exactly where you want them. So the next really cool hack that I want to show you is what I'm going to call the mini bleed. So you want to do this sort of thing if there's any sort of air trapped in your system at the lever end. So it's a real simple one to do without having to go the hassle of doing a full brake bleed. Now, something that's especially cool about this hack is that if your brake pads are worn, basically the system compensates for that and pushes the pistons out a bit more. And by doing that, sometimes you can find the brake lever can pull quite close to the bar, like mine. Now in this case, maybe I want it to pull almost straight away and those pads to contact rather than traveling all the way to the bars. So what you can do is open the system at the top, you put the bleed cup on. In this case, it's a bleed cup because it's the Shimano system, so I'm just going to show you how to do that. With a SRAM system, you do this with a syringe, but it's the same principle, basically, just for this mini bleed. So first things first is to level off that brake lever. So it's higher than the caliper, so the air bubbles can travel up. If you're doing this with your back brake, you want to make sure the caliper is lower than the bars, and the route to the handlebars is as clear as possible. So there's no sort of kinks in the cable that air bubbles can get trapped in. And you can lose some fluid whilst doing this. I should obviously tell you that getting brake fluid anywhere near the actual braking surfaces is really bad. You do not want that to happen. So just pay attention to that when you're doing this process. Now, as it's a Shimano system, you get a bleed funnel and you just carefully thread that into the top of the lever. Just be careful when you're threading these on because they're made of sort of a nylon type plastic and they're very easy to cross thread when you do that. Just take the plunger out because you don't need that at this stage. And then you want to get some Shimano mineral fluid or compatible mineral fluid and just pour that into the reservoir there. It's going to activate the brake a few times and hopefully you're going to get some bubbles traveling out, which means there was a bit of air in the system. It's helpful sometimes to just tap the cable all the way along. It just helps it travel up and into the lever there. So I'm just going to pull the lever a few times and already I can feel that firming right up. So note how earlier it was traveling nearly all the way to the bar and that feels really good already, really, really punchy. So that's a nice feel on there. So the next stage is to get the plunger, once you're happy with how it feels, plug that hole up, then you're going to remove this very delicately. And then if you want to overfill it, you want to just put a little bit more oil just on the very top before you put the bolt in, and then make sure you wipe up any residue there. If you're doing this with dot fluid in a brake, doubly make sure you do this because it can take the paint off the top of your brake levers. So another tip I got from some of those pro mechanics is by setting your brake lever angle to a specified angle, or once you get it where you want it, find out what that angle is and you can jot that down and you can always get back to them. Now you can get these things called Wixies, which are digital angle finders. I use one of those, they're very accurate. You center them on the ground that the bike is on and then you can use them to measure head angles and all sorts of stuff. Or you can do the basic option and go on your Android app store or your iPhone app store and download one of the many sort of digital protractors you can get on there. This particular one was free. It seems to be fairly accurate, but at least gives me a guideline of where the brake levers are going to be. So I'm on a flat surface and as you can see, what am I at there? 29 degrees. So I know that my brake levers are 29 degrees and I can move them around, always getting back to that same place now. Whilst doing this, it's also worth taking note of all your other vital measurements on the bike. Any tyre pressures you like with particular tyres, jot them down because you can get straight to them really easily. Get your suspension settings on there as well, both air pressures and your rebound and your compression clicks. Always sort of know where you are with stuff, so no matter who rides your bike or what you're doing to it, you can always return it exactly the way you want it, really quickly and really easily, which means more time out on the trail. Can't be bad. So earlier on, I showed you how to do that sort of mini bleed, which is a great thing to do if your brake pads are running low and you're finding your levers are pulling really close to the bars. Obviously, that's very helpful for getting air out of the system at the lever end as well. If there is more air in the system, you will need to do a complete brake bleed. We'll run you through that in another video. When you come to replacing brake pads when they are fully worn out, you need to push the pistons back into place. And sometimes when you've got a slightly overfilled system, the pistons will never return to their original position because it's slightly overfilled. And there is a good workaround for that, which I'm just going to show you. So first up, remove the wheel and just put that somewhere aside where fluid is not going to contaminate the disc rotor. So just removing these brake pads just to simulate that I'm going to put some fresh ones in there. Just going to put them aside for a minute. The pistons, which you can just about see in there if you're looking closely, you see that they're actually pushed out from their home position. Now the safest thing for pushing them back in that's not going to damage them is a plastic tyre lever. Don't want to put anything metallic in there ideally because you can risk scratching those pistons. You don't want to do that. So just carefully push the pistons back into place, just lever them in. See, in this particular case, the piston doesn't want to go all the way home, and that's because we overfilled it earlier to compensate for those pads. As I say, most of the time it's a self-setting system, so you won't always need to do this. But sometimes if you have got a system like this, the best way to do it is to remove that bleed screw at the lever, and then when you prise those pistons back into place, you might find that oil that you overfilled earlier on will come back out again. And those pistons will allow them to just push back into their correct spot. So there you go, pistons pushed back into place, brake pads in, brake feels exactly the way I want it to feel. All I've got to do now is put the bike back on the ground, get my brake lever back to 29 degrees, which is my crucial measurement there, and then we're good to go and hit the trails again. Hopefully some of those little quick brake hacks have been useful for you. Have you guys got any brake hacks? Let us know in the comments below. I'd love to hear them. Might make another video on it. For a couple more great videos, click down here for 10 life hacks. So these are all mountain bikers' home hacks, things to make life easier for the mountain biker at home. And if you want to see one of my all-time favourites, the boom cable ties video, cable ties fix everything, they are king, that's the one you want to watch. As always, click on the globe to subscribe. We've got brand new content for you every single week on GMBN Tech. And of course, if you found this little video useful, give us a thumbs up.